Hey everybody, it's Whiskey11. We're going to do our first mod highlight for Factorio. And in this one we are going to be talking about, as you can see on the screen, it's the Uranite power mod, or the Uranium power mod, aka nuclear power for Factorio. This is one of the more interesting mods that I have run across. Being a pretty huge fan of nuclear power in real life and its benefits, I couldn't help but get involved with it. This mod adds a lot to this gameplay. Not only does it add the power and the requisite materials to utilize and produce that power, but it also brings up 3 new weapon types. We'll go ahead and cover those right away since we're standing right here. Basically, what it amounts to is those 3 different weapon types are depleted uranium rounds for your handgun or submachine gun, depleted uranium tank shells, and then nuclear tank shells. I've actually not messed with this last one yet. I'm kind of curious to see what it's like, but we'll mess around with that one at a different time. So, this adds a new level of research, and it is right after sulfur processing. So you can kind of sort of start pretty early with the nuclear stuff. The big thing though is that every single aspect of this is produced in either a assembly machine 3 or assembly machine 2. In fact, I think if we go look at our actual reactors themselves, can be made in either the 2 or 3, but our cooling towers, our steam generators, those can only be made in assembly machine 3s, and you can make the water pumps by yourself. That's nothing new. So it kind of balances it out, because early on, about the same time you get into sulfur right after oil processing, you don't have a whole lot of resources to really devote to the production of the advanced circuits. Those are the blue circuits. Sorry, processing units, not advanced circuits. Well, you do need advanced circuits too. And it balances out by the fact that you need a lot of materials to do that. So you need 10 processing units, 50 advanced circuits, 100 regular electronic circuits, 100 steel, and 100 red wire, which also requires even more electronic circuits and copper. That's just to produce one of the turbine complexes. So that's just this one building here. So it kind of balances out. The actual reactors themselves don't require a whole lot of resources, just 15 electronic circuits, 45 stone brick, 15 pipe, and 45 steel plate. So you can, and they do give you other options, and I've not had terribly good luck with it, but that's probably just because of me. You can hook up these reactors to either like a once through cycle with water, just straight water, or they do add pressurized water into the game. They do give you heat exchangers that allow you to transfer the heat from one loop to another loop so that you don't have to keep pushing water through your reactor. You can do things that way. I've found that it's not as efficient. It takes up just as much space as running coal does, and that once you unlock nuclear, the whole tech tree is unlocked. So really it's only a matter of getting all of the resources to make everything. So at that point, like for instance in this game, I ran with these first 2 reactors for the better part of the game. I mean, they produce 30 megawatts apiece. So you can see we've got, that's math and it hurts, 180 megawatts just in this little area. Now imagine trying to do that with solar panels or with steam boilers. I mean, it would just be this huge area, and you'd have a whole bunch of pollution. Now, I got a lot of pollution anyway, and that's from something entirely different. But let's go ahead and let's talk about our fuel processing. So, if you're not familiar with real-world nuclear power, basically uranium, when it's mined from the ground, is only like 0.07% of the type of uranium isotope we need to split. So these are all fission reactors, so we're splitting uranium. And in order to actually use that in a reactor, we actually have to do what they call enrichment. Now, enrichment basically in uranium reactors is done by fluorination and then by isotopic separation involving centrifuges, because uranium-235 is lighter than natural uranium-238. Uranium-235 is the stuff we can use. Uranium-238 is a little bit more difficult to use. But at any rate, in this game, that's one of the big aspects, is you see all of these chemical plants here with all of this infrastructure. This is all here set up specifically for enriching. So you have two ores that are necessary. You have uranite, which is the uranium, and then you have fluorite, which is fluoride, which is fluorine. And in order to get yellow cake, which is the refined version of uranium, we need an assembly machine 2 that has water going to it and then an input place for the uranite ore. So we can throw our uranite ore in there. And to get our fluoride to fluorinate everything, we actually have to have a chemical plant that has access to the fluorite ore. Now, to get from the slurry to actual yellow cake, we also have to have an additional chemical plant that has sulfuric acid attached to it, as well as the line from our uranite slurry, I guess is what they call it. You will also need to have some empty barrels. Now, the nice part about this, about the way they've set this up, is that once you've started producing your base level enriched uranium, 0.7%, from the combination of yellow cake and fluorine gas, you get the barrels back that you put into the chemical plant for the yellow cake processing. So you only need a couple of them. I'm running 5 on this loop. You could probably do 10 and speed it up, but it really doesn't need a whole lot of barrels. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. So the first step in this is going to be the creation of 0.7% enriched uranium hexafluoride. Now the byproducts, okay, so you're producing 0.7, so that's all that you're producing in this very, very first step. And you'll notice there's this, I'm going to call it a Charlie Foxtrot, this mess of piping here. The next step up from 0.7, you'll see this 0.7 here. This actually enriches it to 1.2%. However, you'll notice the 1.2 comes off the left side, and let me zoom in a little bit more. What comes out the right side of this is actually depleted uranium. It's 0.2%. And this is going to be the holdup on most people's processing line for the uranium power. Basically, this is the stuff that gets turned into your 0.2% uranium pellets. These pellets are what are used to make the depleted uranium rounds and the depleted uranium tank shells, as well as the nuclear tank shell. So you got to have some use for it, and the easiest thing for me to do is just to put a couple of storage tanks there and then hook up a assembly machine to spit out the 0.2 fuel pellets and then separate them into the two things that I'm producing at this point in time. So this stuff has absolutely no other use. You can, however, take this 1.2. Nope, I lied. Never mind. So from this 1.2, we've got to go ahead and enrich it another step before we can actually get to the first product that we can turn into a fuel rod. And that's going to be this 1.2 step, and you'll see that it splits off into 1.7 and 0.7. Now you'll notice 0.7 is the input down here for our 1.2 step. So you'll notice this feeds back on itself. And you can see where that line is there and how it feeds back into this setup down here. That is critical for all of the following steps after this first enrichment step. So once we've gone from 1.2 to 1.7, we can actually take this 1.7 and it will allow us to make a 1.7% enriched U-235 fuel assembly. In doing so, you actually slow down how quickly the reactors are producing heat in the core, so it doesn't work out nearly as well with these lower enrichment levels. And because the tech to enrich further costs you nothing additionally in research, it's just resources, let's just keep on going. So this process is actually going to repeat itself. So we go from 1.7 to 2.2 and it loops back down 1.2 down to the step behind it. And this is going to continue on up. So we got 2.2, which gives us 2.7, which gives us 3.2, which gives us 3.7, which gives us 4.2, which finally gives us 4.7. 4.7% is the highest enrichment value in this game, and is actually all that real nuclear fuel is actually enriched to, is between 3 and 5%. And that's because we don't want these reactors to go nuclear when they bad things happen. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, quite simply, in order to make a nuclear bomb, we need 80+% enriched uranium-235 in order to sustain a chain reaction to create a nuclear bomb. Now, we can sustain a chain reaction at lower levels of enrichment, obviously, between that 3 and 5% range, but we don't have enough of a chain reaction for it to go nuclear in the nuclear explosion that we all imagine. So for those of you who are wondering if a nuclear power plant can explode in a nuclear explosion, there's your answer. You could drop all sorts of bombs and ordnance on the thing, and aside from releasing lots of radiation, it's not going to cause a big nuclear explosion like we saw at Hiroshima or Nagasaki or in all the tests. Simply because there isn't enough uranium-235 or other fissile material, stuff that can be split, to actually produce it. So once we've reached this final step, this 4.7, we have to have an assembly machine. It has to be an assembly machine 2 or 3 to produce the 4.7% fuel pellets. Now you'll see, if we come all the way down here, this whole line, you can see it flashing as it goes up. The amount of enriched uranium making it all the way up here is just a tiny amount, and you need, I believe it's 10 in order to produce one full cycle and to produce the necessary uranium hexafluoride 4.7% to produce a fuel pellet. Then we get into the fuel pellet stage. Oh my. And here's where things start to get a little tricky. So in order for us to make one fuel assembly, we need 2 steel plate and 50 uranium oxide pellets of the whatever grade it is that we're going to be using. Now, like I said, it has to be 1.7% or higher in order to use it, so it kind of balances itself out. There's a lot of resources that go into making every aspect of this to balance out the fact that this is an incredibly energy dense, incredibly powerful way to power your base. So, with that in mind, we don't produce a whole lot of these 4.7 fuel rods very often. This has taken me pretty much all game to really accumulate. We're going to go ahead and take 10 of these out of here for right now, because I'm going to go ahead and show you how we set up our actual nuclear reactors. Now, if we look at how this is all set up, there's a couple things you need to keep in mind. In order for this to work, you need water. A lot of water. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. But wait, there's more. Let me get up there. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 of these just to keep water in the cooling setups for these. If you run out of cooling, it doesn't like produce a massive amount of pollution and cause explosions and damage things. It just shuts off your power. And that's one of the limitations of this mod, is that, well, it's one of many limitations of this mod, is that there's no way for this for there to be a downside if you were to ever lose cooling. It just shuts everything off. Is there a level of realism to that? It depends on which reactor we're talking about, but in the way this game is, that's a pretty minor point. One of the other big downsides is that these fuel pellets actually don't, or the fuel assemblies actually don't decay right now. Now the mod creator is working on doing exactly that, and I hope he gets it done here pretty soon, because right now this mod is pretty powerful with very few downsides aside from just the high materials cost to build everything. But normally, in a normal nuclear reactor, in a real nuclear reactor, after about 18 to 24 months, we have to pull fuel assemblies out of the reactor or shuffle them around so that they're not in the center, so we can put all the good stuff in the center. In this game, we don't have to do that. But let's go ahead and start construction of our very first nuclear reactor here. So I'm going to actually start with the cooling tower, especially since I've got the way this is set up. Everything is indexed off of the cooling tower setup. And I want to make sure I get everything lined up and I have the correct spacing. So we've placed our cooling tower, and you'll notice that this here, this cooling tower water source, as well as this up here, the condenser tank, popped up. Those are going to be important because we need to run pipes to them. We especially need to run it to the cooling tower water source if we plan on actually utilizing this as a power source. Normally, the next thing that you would try and place would be the pressurizer, the steam generator. Sorry, not pressurizer, the steam generator, but you can't place it unless there's a reactor nearby. So we got to place our reactor. And there's our reactor placed. Now, you can read down here, it says, place the reactor access port next to the fission reactor. If you look in your inventory, now it popped up down in my toolbar because there's an empty spot, but if for whatever reason your toolbar is full, it'll actually pop up here in this very first spot, and it says 72 megawatt fission reactor access port. And you want to place it anywhere in the squares adjacent to the reactor. Now I'm going to place it there. Once it's placed, you can actually place your fuel assemblies in. Oh, apparently I took one too many. That's fine. We'll just return it. Now that the reactor's in place, we can actually place our steam generator in there. You'll also notice that it too spawned some additional elements. It spawned what they call the cold leg, which is actually your return line from the condenser tank, and the hot leg, which is what's used to store pressurized water. So with this, we're almost done. All we really need to do is add water, and we need to put some pressurized water in the core. What I'm going to do... Yeah, I think we got plenty of space to do this, or even around all of the crap we got. Oh yeah. Okay, so we're going to get some water into our tank here. It is full. And we are going to go ahead and hook these guys up. One other thing that you're going to need in order to start one of these reactors is a water pressurizer. Okay? And in addition to the water pressurizer, the steam generator, and the cooling tower, you're going to need one of these reactor recirculation pumps, and those can be made you just have to get the correct number of resources. Which you can see is 5 processing units, 10 advanced circuits, 20 electronic circuits, 20 steel plate, 50 copper plate. So not a whole lot of resources, but certainly enough to make this whole endeavor not something that you can do super quick. It requires some effort. But for right now, we are going to go ahead and leave the recirculation pump out. We are going to get our water pressurizer, and we are going to place it so that it is in contact with the reactor. You can actually do this from any of the 4 sides as long as it's in the center. I don't think you can put it off to the side, but I could be wrong. I've never tried it any other way. So we need to get a water line run to it, so we got water run to it. We also need to get some power lines thrown in here. And that's going to help. Okay, so you can see it's starting to add pressure to this whole shebang. Well, it was supposed to be. It says it is. Oh, here it is. So it's going to pump water into the hot leg. I guess we can go ahead and throw our circulation pump. So if we look on the circulation pump, at the base of the pump, you can see that there is the arrow there. That arrow needs to point to the actual reactor core itself. And it will link into the steam generator automatically. Okay, so you can see down in the lower right hand corner of the info screen that pops up, you can see the pressurized water meters going up. If you plan on doing just a single unit, if we were going to stop right here and produce nothing else aside from this, all we would have to do at this point is pressurize this to between 800 and 900 I'm going to call it PSI, to get the reactor running at full capacity. Once you start throwing in the recirculation pump and all that stuff, you'll actually see the pressure in the core will actually drop. In fact, this dual setup has 624 PSI of, it's not really PSI, units of water in it. But if we go down one more, there was one that has more. I mean, it between the two circulation pumps, you can see that they're not having any trouble keeping up. Let's get our power line over here so that these setups can be powered. Looks like that actually worked. So we're almost done. This guy is still adding pressure. We're going to go ahead and run another line up. In order to get these guys started, we have to create steam. In order to create steam, we need water in our condenser line. So we're going to hook up this, and you can see it's going to start trying to generate superheated steam. It actually will kind of lag behind until you get enough steam in the actual reactor itself. And this we can fill up until it reaches all the way until it's full. And you can actually see we actually have reached full power already on this unit, even though we're not full up on the superheated dry steam. Once this gets full up, we will go ahead and disconnect the water source from this condenser lineup, because we actually don't want a continuous water source. That'll actually shut down the reactor because it's trying to push steam through the turbine, and then it's trying to condense it, and it doesn't have anywhere to go. And once this tank gets filled up here, the condenser tank gets filled up, it ends up not allowing any of this water to leave, and then once this gets full, it shuts down the reactor. So that's bad news. We don't want that. Okay, so it's all powered up. This unit is now fully operational. I mean, that's really all that it takes to get this guy rolling. You can see it's automatically regenerating the steam pressure that we need. We are currently sitting at 712 units of pressurized water. I'm going to go ahead and let this go all the way up to 1,000 before I jump down and do my other side, because we are doubling this, and then I'm going to need to add water. I can almost guarantee that I'm going to need to add waters. Maybe not. Well, we're going to do it anyway, because I don't want to run out of water and have these shut down spontaneously, especially not once the laser turrets start firing up. But that's this whole mod in a nutshell. I mean, once you've gotten this setup figured out, I mean, there is a larger reactor set up in there. It is a 144 megawatt reactor. However, they don't have any of these buildings set up for it, so the only way that you can use them is by using the heat exchangers and steam pumps. And me personally don't particularly care for that setup. It takes up a lot of space. Being 144 megawatts, it's kind of, you're not getting, it's 144 megawatts of thermal energy. It's not 144 megawatts of electricity. It doesn't quite work out that way because of the conversion. Okay, we're at 1,000. We're going to go ahead and disconnect our pressurizer because it is no longer needed. And we are just going to repeat this process, just mirrored. So I need to get my tub out of the way. Grab my cooling towers. Get a power line to it. Now you'll notice it hasn't produced any steam yet, and it won't. I actually am missing a pump. Well, here I thought I had made everything for this. Apparently I was wrong. First time for everything, I suppose. Yikes. And need more red circuits. There we go. Alright. So while he's building, we'll come back up here and we will work on our water piping. Nope, one more. It's a little confusing if you're trying to keep all these straight. So just like in the last one, we gotta run some water lines up. We gotta fill our water tank up here with water. Okay, it's going. Oh, that might be a mistake. Okay, there we go. Now it's starting to produce some steam. We need our water recirculation pump again, pointing that arrow at the reactor. There it goes. You can see it drop down into an acceptable range. Once this guy gets filled up, boom! That's a complete 60 megawatts of electricity just dumped onto the map. And as you can see, you know, it doesn't take up a whole lot of space. I mean, this entire thing right here is the only power generation I have on this entire map. Just an insane amount of available power. Just unbelievable. Alright. Now the last thing I like to do just to make sure that these lines don't have any extra water in them is I will go ahead and remove them. That way if there's a need for room in the condensers, we don't have to worry about them getting overly full. Now, the one thing you want to pay attention to is if you're linking together all of these lines, you want to make sure that they're all getting filled back up on every tick. You can see how he's getting filled back up, but it's awfully slow. What that tells me is that there's just enough water being pumped into the loops here to keep everything rolling. But there it is. That's nuclear power in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions about how this mod works, please feel free to ask. I do plan on doing demonstrations of these. I do have a bunch of these saved up. These are just the regular depleted uranium tank shells. They do make a pretty interesting little explosion. The submachine gun, the depleted uranium rounds don't. It's not a huge deal. They are reasonably well balanced. You can see I'm up here. I'm almost at 100% for the biter evolution. That just basically means that there's not a whole lot more for them to go higher. I'm not going to see any more dangerous creatures at this point in time. But with how far away everything is, I'm not going to go try and chase one down in this video. It's already at 30 minutes long. So, at any rate, I really enjoy this mod. It gets my nerd senses going because, like I said, I really enjoy the whole aspect of nuclear power and what it means for our civilization, and I'm a little disappointed with the way things have been going around the United States. Obviously, with this mod, there's going to be some things that are coming down the pipeline, like they're going to add the fuel decay is going to actually require you to have a spent fuel cooling pond, and I'm sure it will take this setup and break it. We won't be able to do that without reorganizing everything, and then you'll have to worry about cooling all that down, and I'm sure there will be more challenges added to this game to make this seem a little bit more necessary, because right now there's really not a huge rush for me to go out and find the different deposits of stuff. Oh, while we're talking about that, let's go ahead and talk about that real quick before we close this out. So the uranite deposits actually show up on the map as a dark green. Where is the... You can't see it because of all the red. This is another one, if I remember correctly, there. I was hoping that there would be one that isn't in pollution, so I could show that. I don't think there is. The other, the fluoronite, is actually purple. So this is a purple color. You can see it there. Where did I could have swore there was another deposit that was like... It shows up as being a proper green color. No. It's like a dark green. I'm pretty sure this is it. There's the purple for the fluoronite deposit, but... At any rate, right now there doesn't seem to be a huge need for you to go out and actually mine these resources. There's more fluorinite. It's fluoride. Fluorine. I keep saying fluoride. Fluoride is a form of fluorine. Right now there's not a huge reason to go out and actually mine this stuff in massive quantities. In fact, my entire fluoride, fluorine, fluorinite, whatever production is 3 burner miners that I occasionally go fill up with coal and sit and wait because you just don't need that much of it. And then I've got these three electric miners up here because this deposit was real close to my base right off the bat. So that's that. If you guys got any questions, throw them down in the comments. Otherwise, this is the uranium power mod for Factorio. I'm hoping it doesn't get broken in 0.13. I hope I can continue to use it without having to try and hack the game files. But it does work with Resource Spawner Overhaul, which is another mod that one of these days I'm going to actually have to go over. And that's what's spreading it all out and making it very rare. As you can see, it doesn't pop up very, very frequently. The uranite deposits don't anyway. Apparently the fluorine deposits do, but... At any rate, like, comment, subscribe. This is Whiskey. Thanks for watching.